Hey Jonas, how are you, my man?
Hi, Adnan. I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic, man. Welcome to the show, the Nuclear Show. Welcome. It's lovely to have you, man.
It's lovely to be here. I'm excited to record the first episode with you.
The first episode, yeah, let's go. I mean, it's gonna be a very exciting show, the Nuclear Show. I mean, it's nuclear is so fascinating, right? And there is so many exciting things happening in the space of nuclear. In 2026 is gonna be a very big year. So super excited to have Nuclearis Energy on board as a partner, and you and I have been working on this show for 2 months now. It's been a lot of work, so I'm very excited to have you on board, Nuclearis on board, and many other guests for many years to come. So welcome. Let's start with a quick introduction of yourself, and what do you do, and a little bit about Nuclearis as well.
Okay, so I don't know where to begin. To do an introduction can be very long, but let's do it quickly. So I'm fr originally from France, born in France, but grew up in Sweden, and lived my life to around like 20. Then I moved to Paris, and spent a couple of years in Paris, learned my mother tongue, moved back to Sweden, and started my first company actually when I was 16 years old. So I've been an entrepreneur all my life in various businesses, from ranging from sales to IT. And currently, I am the vice president of Nuclearis Energy and the co-founder, one of the co-founders of the company. That's a quick background of me.
No, that's amazing. So, how did you come up with the idea of Nuclearis and the reactor that you wanted to build? How did that all kind of begun?
So the story was like this. I actually We have to go back 8 years for the story to begin properly. So I met my wife 8 years ago when I was living in Argentina. No, what am I saying? When I was living in Barcelona, and we were traveling the world, and I was actually in the music industry for a time, in performing as a DJ and producer in Brazil. And me and my wife travel around, and then she's from Ukraine, so she told me like, let's go to Ukraine. And I said, okay, why not? I was tired of the music industry. I needed something new to do. So we traveled to Odessa, and I just fell in love with the country. I like the people, the culture, um, and we lived there, and we started a family. We had a daughter. Fast forward to 2022, the war happened in Ukraine. Russia attacked Ukraine, and we ended up as refugees and fled the war, and we ended up in Argentina. So we lost all business, we lost everything we owned, everything we have built for 6 years, just gone. Um,
Wow.
and we had to rebuild from the beginning. And I happen to have a friend who is Swedish Argentinian, and I was tired of being in Europe with all the news and war, and so I needed a fresh start, and ended up in Argentina, where I met Santiago Badran, who is the CEO and the founder of Nuclearis, and we were talking, in Argentina, you have something called asado. So it means that everybody's gathering for a big barbecue, and you invite a lot of neighbors, a lot of family, and you drink wine. I don't drink alcohol, but me and Santi, the only thing we did was that we spoke about inventions, engineering, and businesses. So fast forward a couple of months, of course, I'm in the energy business for the last 8 years. And I am talking about nuclear, we're talking about energy. And then Santi takes out pen and paper and he draws the concept of the N1 reactor. And I say to him on the spot, I say, this is the best thing I've seen since sliced bread. I'm all in on
Wow.
this. Let's make this a reality.
Wow.
And from that, we started Nuclearis Energy. We went to US. We formed the company there, and that's how we started. And we have two other co-founders as well on the team. We have very fantastic and bright people working in several countries. So it's a fantastic business and a fantastic opportunity.
Wow, that's a fascinating story, and I've known you for like 2 3 months now. You never mentioned that you were a DJ because I used to be a DJ as well. I DJed in Amsterdam and Seoul, had a great time. But let me get back to the N1 reactor. What is it about the N1 reactor that makes it unique and one of the best in the world? And you talk about it being the most efficient reactor in the world. What was it, the initial concept that really got you sort of locked in and you're all in on this mission, and you have been on this mission for 8 years? And how has that N1 reactor evolved to what it is now?
So I mean, I we started 2 years ago, a little bit 2 years ago. Nuclearis has been active since 2009 as a manufacturing company of nuclear components and engineering services. So Nuclearis Energy is a separate company only working with the reactor. And what got me that I fell in love with the reactor and the reactor idea, it was based on a very simple drawing. If you have a normal NPP, I know it's hard to imagine how complex a nuclear power plant is. You have the reactor, you have a refueling machine, you have a decay pool where to store the spent nuclear fuel, and it's like a large building and several buildings. So what got me interested was the simplification of everything, how you can simplify something. And the main problem with a microreactor is that it's not economically viable, because Nuclearis N1 is a microreactor. And the problem with a microreactor is that you drop in efficiency. So there is some things that you need to solve in a microreactor. That is the capacity factor, is the efficiency, and what do you do with the spent fuel? So Nuclearis, the N1, has solved those three things. So first of all, what do you do with the spent fuel? So what got my mind like, wow, what a different idea and concept, was that after you don't refuel the reactor for 20 years. So that's something new in nuclear. The reactor is on for 1, 2, maximum 24, maybe 36 months, maximum. That's the longest fuel cycle you have. And so what Nuclearis do is that instead of using that energy in 1 year, Nuclearis is using that energy in 20 years. And
Wow.
so that means that there is no refueling of the reactor. So you solve the capacity factor. So it's on 99% of the time, it's on. And what that
Wow.
also creates is that when you have it on for that long period of time, you don't have the refueling, and you can remove a lot of systems inside the reactor to simplify the reactor. And another thing that I was arguing with Santi, okay, but Santi, how do you solve the end of life of the reactor? The fuel itself needs to be removed from the reactor. And then Santi told me, no, the reactor itself becomes the dry storage unit and the decay pool, meaning that Nuclearis is like a capsule. So this
Yeah.
capsule, where everything fits inside, becomes the storage unit. So what happens after 20 years, the reactor shuts down, and it's the storage unit for 100 years. And after 100 years, it's much easier to just remove the capsule and transport it away, and hopefully to reuse the fuel. The third thing that got me going, okay, but how do we solve the efficiency? Because the efficiency drops to around 25%. And when the efficiency drops to 25%, there is no economic there is no economy in the reactor anymore. So what happens is that Nuclearis is using a reheater technology. So the steam goes in a double cycle, reheats, and goes back to first to a high pressure turbine and then to a low pressure turbine. And based on that, you can get to a 37% efficiency, and that's almost 45% more efficient than any other microreactor. So that got me very, very, very excited. But then another thing is also a problem in nuclear is nuclear needs a large amount of water to cool down a reactor. And all water sources on the world already taken. So where are you going to put all new nuclear? That's a big, big issue. So Santi told me, but we air cool the reactor. We just use air cooling condensers. And that blew my mind. So all together with all that it's stored underground, it's safe, it's micro, it can be produced in 11 months, simplified build, 80% less parts. I was sold on that. So that's how, yeah.
That's amazing. Like, you've solved all the holy grail of, like, nuclear reactors, and here it is. So how far are you in your production and your launch, your first major projects and all that stuff? What's the timeline on getting this thing, I guess, moving at scale? Because you probably have to do quite a because it's small reactor, you can push them out very quickly. Like, you want to have sort of a mass factory production for these things.
Yeah. So one of the biggest problem in nuclear is that a nuclear has a large vessel, and that vessel is where you have the nuclear material, the nuclear rods. So say a vessel is 20, 30, 35 meter in diameter. When you have that huge vessels, there is only 3 or 4 companies in the world who can manufacture that. And that's, to get one is around 5 years waiting time. So that's a huge bottleneck in production of nuclear power plants. And it's not like it's done 10 per day or 100 per day. So in terms of a microreactor, you have a diameter of 2.5, 3.5, or 4 meters. That opens up because a vessel can only be forged. It cannot be made with welding or any other technology. It has to be forged. So when you have a smaller reactor, it means that, and in this case as a microreactor, it means that you're opening up for US capacity, or open up for European capacity, or open up for Asian capacity that was before not nuclear, but now can do pressure vessels. So you open a door to hundreds of forging companies around the world. So that bottleneck of delivering the vessel, which is one of the biggest bottlenecks in nuclear, is to get the vessel. So in terms of timelines, where Nuclearis are, Nuclearis is from around 3 to 4 years from starting production.
Wow, that's exciting. How do you compare to all the other micronuclear reactors, and how advanced are they in terms of their production compared to the N1 Nuclearis reactor?
I mean, you have to make a difference between microreactor SMR, and conventional nuclear power plant. So that's in
Yeah.
terms of if you take a microreactor, which Nuclearis are, it's from 1 to maybe 35 megawatt. Above that, 50 to 350 megawatt, you're talking about SMRs. And above that, 400 to 1,200 megawatt, you're talking about conventional nuclear.
Yeah.
Um, so that's a huge difference between who you are comparing yourself to.
Yeah.
So SMRs are more comparing themselves to large scale nuclear, because SMRs cannot be done 100% in a factory, whilst a microreactor can be 100% made in a factory and shipped out and delivered and start to produce electricity, whereas an SMR and a large scale nuclear has to be built on site.
Yeah.
Um,
No, yeah, thank you for that comparison. So, for a micro reactor, what are the best use cases? Is it data centers? Is it buildings? Is it, apartment units? What is the best use case for a micro nuclear reactor like N1?
Yeah, let me go back to your first question.
Yeah.
You asked what is the difference between the Nuclearis and the competitors. So
Yeah.
um, there is Gen 3 plus reactors, Gen 3 reactors, and then you have Gen 4 reactors. So
Yeah.
Gen 3 reactors are reactors that doesn't have passive cooling, whereas Gen 3 plus reactor have passive cooling systems.
Mm.
And Gen 4 reactors, they are using new material science, new technology that doesn't that is has not been industrialized yet. So Gen 3 and Gen 3 plus reactors, that's already existing this technology for 50 years and has been proven,
Mm.
and you have the supply chain, whereas Gen 4 reactors doesn't have that yet. And it could be new alloys that needs to be invented, new physics that simply doesn't exist today, but will of course exist in the future. So we cannot really compare ourselves with Gen 4 reactors, because we are not competing on the same criteria. So we need to compare ourselves to Gen 3 and Gen 3 plus reactors. And as far as I know, I don't see that we have any real competitors just in our segment. Because a microreactor is, you can have a microreactor that is 1 megawatt that will never power a data center. It will because you don't get the economy in such a small reactor. But that reactor can be for military use. It can be for very specific remote islands, whereas the Nuclearis reactor is a 17 megawatt reactor, and it can compete with SMRs and conventional nuclear power plants in terms of the cost of electricity. Um,
Wow.
so
That's
the
amazing.
the the use cases of the Nuclearis reactor, because what you can do if you want to have a large scale 1,000 megawatt plant, you can just simply modulate and have 58 N1s modular next to each other. And
Yeah.
what's good with a microreactor is that it takes up very, very little land area. So one reactor is around a basketball court.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. And how does it fit? How does N1 fit with the whole regulatory framework that's already in place for nuclear? How many things you can bypass? Because you're producing these things very quick, right? 11 months, 9 months, and you're shipping them out and you're installing them very quickly. So are you trying to, I guess, innovate the regulatory framework with your new technology? Is that sort of something you're pushing for?
No, so the regulatory framework for Gen 3 and Gen 3 plus reactor already exists. So the regulators around the world, and NRC, they know how to regulate those technologies already. So the benefit of the N1 reactor is that you have a very low burnup. So it means that
Mm,
you're not putting so much stress to the vessel, because the burnup is not in 1 year, it's in 20 years. So you can say, like,
mm,
you are not taking your Ferrari on a 200 kilometer per hour ride, or 320 kilometer per ride. You're going in 20 kilometers per hour with your Ferrari. That's kind of safe. So from a
yeah.
regulatory perspective, you have an advantage because you have a low burnup. And the second advantage is that you don't refuel and remove the nuclear material from the reactor. So this is something that all reactor vendors has to solve. Of course, Nuclearis has a patent, so not everybody can do the same as we do. But if any reactor vendors is out there and want to talk with us about the solution, and they are welcome to contact us, of course, because we have
Yeah.
probably the best waste solution out there.
Yeah, that's awesome because I think waste is. It seems from everything that I have read and spoken to a lot of people, is that waste seems to be the big issue for the public. You know, and the most fascinating thing I've learned about nuclear waste is that it's not really a nuclear technology issue. It seems to be more around policy, politics, the political will to push through public's perception about nuclear. What can you talk about waste and radiation and you know, to do with nuclear and maybe you know, N1 technology as well?
I mean, there is many regulated markets in the world, but the most regulated market is nuclear. There is not a market that is more regulated than the nuclear industry. There is the safety protocols are so heavily involved. I mean, if you go back to the beginning of nuclear, you had, if there is an accident, the power plant needed to be able to run for 7 seconds without human interventions. Today, that standard is up to, I think, 7 hours or 24 hours or even more, that a power plant needs to be able to run itself. If the worst case scenario, the power plant needs to be able to run itself for several hours, or if it's up to 48 hours or 24 hours without human intervention. So the safety margins in nuclear and the waste handling and everything around is not going backward or standing still. It's getting harder and harder and harder. So from a safety perspective today, the nuclear fuel is probably the most safe fuel on the planet, because if you take all the nuclear fuel that has been used since the beginning of nuclear, you can fit that in a football stadium.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. Like when you compare that waste with the waste that coal produces, right? It's like it's nothing. You know, I don't mean to minimize waste, and we're all about you know sustainability and things like that. But when you compare that in terms of like the insane power generation we get from nuclear, and it solves power shortages, it solves price hikes, and it solves the demand we need in the next 3 years for artificial intelligence, data centers. We're talking about maximum Earth capacity of 10 billion humanoids, you know, working and living among us, and 50 billion digital agents in the form of artificial intelligence that are scheduling our meetings, they are writing our meeting notes, they are automating our workflows and doing tasks for us. Nuclear power generation, you know, when you compare that with the its opportunity for the world and the waste compared to all the other waste, I think it's really important to put that into perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to power density. So, I mean, if you look at a small, take your thumb like this. and then you take your thumb in half.
Mm.
One small uranium pellet like this, it's 260,000 kilowatt hours. That's
Wow.
roughly roughly energy for 3,000 people during a year, or 2,000 people for 1 year.
That's insane.
Yeah. So
That's
that
insane.
that power density, when that I mean, you only take out around 5% of the energy in uranium. So 95% of the energy is still there that can be used. And in some countries,
Mm.
like in France, you're using used uranium and mix it with another fuel called MOX fuel and use it in other reactors. So that's something that a lot of new developers out there are developing new technologies. So I believe that in 10, 15 years, or maybe in 20 years or 30 years, spent nuclear fuel will be a commodity that everybody wants, not something that you want to throw away, that you want that fuel because you can reuse 95% of that energy. So
Wow.
when that fuel is stored, because today you don't have final storage, you try to store the spent nuclear fuel next to the nuclear power plant for as long as possible, because you still have radiation from the fuel, so you don't want to move it, you want to have it close by to the nuclear power plant. So you store it first for a couple of years, maybe from 3 to 20 years. You store it in a pool. After that, the fuel is taken out from the pool and it's stored in very, very, very big canisters that is sealed with concrete and is guarded and surveilled 24/7. There can be absolutely no leak, and it has to be in super, super safe environment. And I don't know any other industry that takes care of its fuel better than nuclear.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I think the fuel cycles and the fuels for nuclear plants and all sorts of different generational um, uh, uh, reactors, I think it's going to be quite an exciting topic to get into further detail in 2026. I think I'm hearing a lot about fuel cycles and fuel chats and things like that, which is super exciting. um wh- and I think in terms of visualizing the waste and understanding more about the safety, there's some really exciting upcoming plants. There's one in Finland that's coming up. I think Sweden is not far behind. You mentioned France. I think those are going to be quite interesting to be use cases to show us in terms of what these plants can do and what nuclear can do, and what that waste looks like, and the safety around the fuel and the projects. There was a recent one, just there was a new unit installed in one of the existing plants in Russia, for example. That seemed to have gone very well. There's quite a lot of projects coming up. I don't know all the details about what exactly they're using, but there is, Africa is doing stuff. There is Egypt that's doing a project. It's nuclear is looking very exciting.
Yeah, so I think your topic is around what to do with spent fuel as a final storage.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what you have is that you have in Finland, I think they will be the first country. I don't know if they are ready or going to be ready this year with a final storage solution. So
Yeah.
they have basically built it inside an old mountain, um, very, very long, and deep down in the ground, to store
Yeah.
spent nuclear fuel. So I think they will be the first one to go live. And we are cooperating with a company called Deep Geo. And Deep
Mm.
Geo is a company that takes spent fuel from nuclear power plants and store it in those locations. It's as true as you say. It's probably going to be built in the US as well. It's going to probably be built in Africa, maybe in South America as well. I don't know what's going on in Asia right now, but it's happening a lot in this segment. But still, it's still very safe, and that's how spent fuel has been handled for 50 years. It's because it's so small. I mean, all nuclear power plants, they don't have bigger than a basketball court where they spend all the nuclear fuel. So, and that's where they spent all the nuclear fuel today. Exception is Sweden, actually. Sweden has a centralized middle term storage unit. So they spend it first 3.5 years in next to the nuclear power plant. Then, because the nuclear power plants are next to the sea or the ocean, they have a boat that goes around and pick up the fuel and put it in a central storage.
Yeah, yeah, it's super fascinating, and I think those projects it's definitely something we want to keep a close eye on in understanding fuel, how it's managed, and the spent fuel. It's super super fascinating. Tell me about this idea of the N1 reactor and the installation of it. Is how did you come up with this idea of installing the N1 reactor underground? That's super cool how you do that. Talk to me about the idea behind that.
Yeah, so the reactor itself, it sits underground, but on top of that, there is also a concrete dome. So you can say it's like first you have the soil, and above the soil, it's a bunker above it. So the reason why it's not a new concept to have a microreactor underground. So that's not something that
Okay.
Nuclearis invented itself. The reason why
Right.
you don't do it with not large scale nuclear is because it's not feasible from an engineering perspective and from an economic perspective. But for a microreactor, it's much better to store it underground because you have the surrounding soil that absorbs the radiation. And in the case of Nuclearis, is that Nuclearis is surrounding the reactor. Nuclearis is putting in a special soil that is heat conductive. So in terms, if there is an accident, worst case scenario, there is an accident, because what you need in a nuclear reactor is that you need to be able to cool down the reactor. You need to be able to create from steam, you need to be able to create droplets. If you cannot do that, your reactor, you will have a meltdown. So what you want to do is that you want to be able to create steam, and from that you need to conduct heat out from the reactor. And if you cannot use your normal coolant flow, the Nuclearis reactor can use the surrounding soil, because it's a special conductive soil that we mix with the normal soil surrounding the reactor. So we can heat dissipate heat from the capsule to the surrounding soil.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's amazing. And how do you deal with things like earthquakes? If you have like a huge shake, how does your reactor respond to that?
I mean, that wouldn't be an issue because the seismic activity is mostly affecting above ground. So
Okay.
that wouldn't be an issue. But if you have a lot of seismic activities, you probably shouldn't put the reactor there. But it's more safe to have the reactor underground than above ground in that case.
Yeah, that's fascinating, right? It's like so much of the nuclear plants I see in pictures, they're sort of like they look ugly and they pop up in the air, and you're like, man, I don't want that in my town. Like, come on, that's ugly. But then I look at the nuclear N1 nuclear battery. It looks like a battery. It's beautiful, and you're like, man, that is amazing. I want tours. Like, I want to sell tourist tours to go under in the bunker and have a look, you know, because it looks so beautiful. It looks
Yeah. So
amazing.
I mean, yeah, yeah, I mean, we get radiation every day. I mean, we
Yeah,
have in the sky above us, we have the biggest nuclear reactor in the world. It's called the sun. So
yeah,
that's a fusion reactor, and it's emitting radiation. And if we would stand in the sun, I don't know for how long, if it's 24 hours, 72 hours, but if we would stand in the sun for a longer period of time, we would die of the radiation. So it's about how much radiation we can take. And the same comes in a nuclear reactor. So if you work
yeah,
in a nuclear power plant, you have those meters on you of how much radiation you can handle per year or per day. So
yeah,
it would be perfectly safe to go down in the Nuclearis reactor and check it out
yeah.
during operations, but you wouldn't want to be there for several days, of course.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's one thing I think the public and people can learn and understand and shift their perceptions about nuclear is the closest you can come in terms of the energy we have in the universe, and the sun is essentially a nuclear, you know, a nuclear reactor. And then it's amazing. Like if you look at a story like in Gabon in Africa, you know, around 2 billion years ago, there was like a natural nuclear fission event that happened with this Earth creating its own, you know, fission reactor that ran for hundreds of thousands of years. It's quite fascinating. Like we have it, and nuclear is more closer to nature and the universe and how it functions than Elon Musk doing, you know, solar batteries and solar panels and capturing the energy and then pushing it into all the grid system. Nuclear is much more you know, in tune with how the universe and the nature works than any other energy.
Yeah. So a comparison. Say that we would, for an example, uh, we would take away all the oil and gas and coal from the planet, around 150,000 terawatts of energy produced every year. If we would replace that with wind and solar, now I cannot say exactly how much solar you need, but we say we are going to replace that with wind power. It would take up a continent like Africa
Wow.
with just wind. So that's how much wind you need. I think you need 63 or 65 million windmills. So that's not feasible to build. When it comes to the solar, the problem you have in solar and wind is that you have a very low capacity factor. So if you install 100 megawatt of wind and solar, if you install 100 megawatt of wind of solar in Canada, you only get out 5 because you only have a capacity factor of 5 because the sun only works 5% in a day. So the same goes for wind. I think it's around 15%. The other issue you have with wind and solar is that you have a degradation of 2.5 to 5% per year. So the efficiency goes down with 2.5 to 4% every year.
Mm.
And there is a lifespan of maybe 25, 30 years until you need to totally change it again. Whereas in nuclear, you can extend the lifetime maybe up to 80 to 100 years. So that makes that solar and wind to still today is too expensive. That doesn't mean that we should count it out, uh, but today it's too expensive. And if you want to have base load power, you need to add batteries. And batteries, you lose a lot of efficiency and you have a huge degradation of the batteries. So, and they are super expensive to build yet. But that doesn't mean that it's not suitable in different areas. I mean, data centers, for an example, they need diesel generators, they need backup batteries, and so on. So there is a lot of industries that needs this, or even towns and industries. But and solar. I mean, when I'm buying a new house, I will for sure install solar. If I could install an N1, I would, but I think it's a little bit too much energy for me.
Yeah. Next thing you know, you're like flying rockets from your apartment, because you've got all this energy, extra energy. Like, what do you do with it? You might attract all the aliens because they want energy, right? So you'll attract
Yeah,
all the aliens. That'll be fun. Um, and I think the interesting thing, you're right. It's not about one form of energy as much as people like to sell you that sort of, all you need is just this. And Elon does it all the time. It's like, oh, everything else is rubbish. Just do solar and blah, blah, blah. And I think you're right. There's always going to be, we want as much variables and diversity in this clean energy sources, including nuclear, and nuclear will be very powerful for doing some really heavy lifting, especially in the world of data centers, artificial intelligence, and many other things. But what's really fascinating is, all these renewable sources over the last 15 years fighting for like climate change and renewable energy sources have done, they're kind of running out of steam in terms of like the attention of the public because they're just causing more trouble. Energy is less accessible. There are more issues with the grid. There are more outages. Prices are going up. Every winter, every household can't keep up, the usage of the energy, which is crazy for us in this sort of day and age we live in, where everything has to be affordable and abundant and accessible for everybody, right? Um, and this is where energy can come and change the game because it is clean. Nuclear is clean. Nuclear is, sustainable, and there are all these new generation reactors in the technology, and there is a shift happening in the public perception for nuclear. It's well regulated, and so I think there is a tipping point where it just accelerates in terms of making life better on Earth for everyone.
yeah. I mean, nuclear is now a lot of people will maybe debate me and say that nuclear is not the cheapest power source, but nuclear is the cheapest power source. If you calculate the all the things, capacity factor, grid connection, baseload power, transportation, degradation of the plant, and so on. And if you combine all metrics, you will find that nuclear is the absolute cheapest power source. You might have hydro that can be cheaper because it's just flowing naturally and it has a quite high power density. But hydro cannot be built everywhere. It can only be built in very few places, and it needs to be very close to a population. So if you have it too far away, you cannot use that kind of hydropower. So hydropower has already been built.
Mm.
Um, so when it comes to the power density of nuclear is unmatched. The price is just unmatched. You cannot match it with anything. And when Elon says that we only need the size of, I don't know, what he said maybe it was a town like Dallas that could power the entire planet or power the entire US. That might be right, but it's with the current grid we have and with the battery capacity that you need to build. He's right, you can do it, but the cost will be astronomical. The time to build all the batteries needed maybe takes 500 years, and
Wow, yeah.
the cost will be quadrillions, in terms of money. So maybe it's possible to do it in 50 years, in 100 years, but currently with the technology we have today, it's not feasible to do it now. Just the grid balancing. I mean, Elon is smart because when you have wind and solar, what you do with the net is that usually when you produce 1 kilowatt hour in a nuclear power plant or in a coal plant or any kind of electricity production, even in wind and solar, that electricity needs to be used at the same time. You cannot store it, you cannot transport it for half a day. It's produced here, somebody here needs to use it. That's how it works.
Yeah.
So when you have a power grid, you're planning your production. So it means that today we estimate that we have 100,000 households that needs electricity. If 20,000 of those people doesn't use electricity, that will be a huge problem for the producer of electricity. It means that he needs to shut down his production. If you're producing too much energy, or if you produce too much energy, you need to shut down the production or you need to add somebody who can use that energy. If you have the opposite, where you're producing too little energy and you cannot add more capacity, you need to shut down. You need to shut down. That's why you can see blackouts in cities, because if you don't produce enough electricity, you need to remove users. And that's what you're calling balancing the net. Because if the net is not balanced, meaning that you are producing 1 kilowatt hours, you have one user. If the net is not balanced, the net breaks down. So, so for that, when you're adding renewables, meaning that renewables, they cannot be planned. So you cannot add capacity, but you can remove capacity, but you cannot add capacity. So what happens is that you need a lot of batteries that goes offline, online, offline to just balance the net. We're not talking about storing the energy. We're talking about balancing the net. So what Elon Musk have done is that he has built a lot of chargers, you know, those, what are they called? Power chargers or Tesla chargers.
Yes.
So he has built those ones all around US. Very smart. So every time a Tesla is hooked up to the net, it's a potential source to balance the net.
Yeah.
So everybody all around Europe who is putting up EV chargers, they're not just making the money to sell the electricity to charge your car, they're also working to balance the net. So that's super smart, because then the Tesla or whatever electric car you're using becomes an infrastructure product for the net to balance it.
Yeah. I think he's very smart, and he's done a very good job of trying to place Tesla and create that excitement about the EV products and charging and solar energies and solar cities. He's done a really good job at doing that, and he's very smart with using real life events and crises and natural events to provide his products as a way to save whatever that crisis is. He's doing it now in Venezuela. He's giving everybody free access to Starlink, which is a product from SpaceX, and you can just have a dish that can connect to the internet with all the satellites, about 10,000 satellites that are orbiting the Earth. So he's really smart at coming up with these calculations and creating these products and getting that public buy-in. What do you think is the holy grail for N1 nuclear micro reactor in terms of how do you roll this out, and how does it become that critical infrastructure for cities and public use and
So
data centers. And how do you drive it? What's your plan of attack?
yeah, so it's funny you mentioned Elon, how he takes an old technology that already exists, because electric cars is not something new. To have internet from space is not something new. To send out rockets, it's not something new. So he takes a technology that already exists and he fine tune it. He makes a unique configuration. Like, okay, we have an electric vehicle. Let's remove everything that we don't need from this vehicle. But the supply chain exists, the batteries exist, technologies exist. So he adds some software there and he do smart engineering. He don't need to invent the wheel again. He's doing smart engineering. And the same can apply to the N1. The N1 is not new science. It's not new technology. It's a unique configuration of already proven technology. And
Mm.
in that case, it becomes such a unique product, but the supply chain already exists. The fuel already exists. So everything in the N1 can be bought on the market today. We don't need to set up a special manufacturing for a special part with an alloy that has never been used before. We can go to different suppliers and buy the different products and assembly them. So what we are going to do in Nuclearis is that we're going to do an assembly line, and we will have very little manufacturing, but we will have a very good assembly line. So we will have a supply chain from all over US, and we will probably use supply chains from other countries as well. But what we will be good at is the assembly. So our plan is to roll out 1,000 units per year. We know
Wow.
that will probably take 10 to 15 years to come to that capacity, but
Yeah.
that's our goal.
Yeah, that's a good number, and that assembly piece I think is where you are really going to shine. And everyone doing these big projects that require energy, whatever they're building, data centers and whatnot, they want to be looking at N1 reactor and having that activated very quickly to get the results they want. Um, what are your views on nuclear in terms of world energy dominance? China, America, Trump is going hard on nuclear. There's trillions being invested. He was on Joe Rogan talking about why nuclear is a good solution. There is, the 3 Miles Island nuclear plant that Microsoft is trying to sort of reactivate. It's about a $1.6 billion project. There's delays in there as well. Neil Chatterjee, who he served as a chairman and a member of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission under Trump's first administration, wrote a really nice article piece about the challenges of that project. There is the nuclear power station in Ukraine that's under Russia control, and Zelensky wants a peace deal, that to be in the peace deal to get that nuclear plant back. What are your thoughts on sort of like geopolitics and nuclear and world dominance?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I'm convinced that, I mean, what any country wants to be is to be independent in as many aspects as possible, because
Mm,
independence is national security. So nuclear needs to be treated as national security. Energy needs to be treated as national security for any country, because
yeah,
it's without it, you will not have defense, you will not have schools, you will not have manufacturing, data centers, and so on and so on. So nuclear is a part of that, and you can
yeah,
see a very strong correlation between nuclear power and GDP growth. If you take, for an example, the European Union, I think it was roughly around the GDP was $16 trillion at 2007, and US was around $15 trillion.
Yeah.
Today, the European Union, I think, is $19 trillion, and the US is $30 trillion. So the
Wow.
European Union, if you account for inflation, I think the European Union is actually on minus in GDP growth. I mean, the US growth on almost $15 trillion since 2007, and the European Union grow with $3 trillion. And what did
Wow.
Europe do in that period of time? They shut down their I think they went from 122 gigawatt of nuclear down to 96 or 97. So where
Wow.
did that production go? It went to China. That's what happened.
Mm.
So the European, if they would have added the double amount of nuclear, they could have doubled the amount of production. And what happened in the US? US didn't build new nuclear, but they kept their nuclear. So they kept their how do you say? They kept their ability to continue their production. But what they grow in US is that they grow in they didn't grow in industrial production. They grow in services like Google, Facebook, or OpenAI, Microsoft. A lot of companies came in, but all those companies they needed manufacturing. And what happened with China from 2007 to today? China was an economy of 3.5 trillion dollar 2007. They had an output of nuclear at 8 gigawatt. If you fast forward to 2025, they're almost at 60 gigawatt, and their economy grow to almost 20 trillion dollar. So while the US didn't build new nuclear, they outsourced all that manufacturing to China. So that's why China could grow as it did, because it built new nuclear. That's simple as
Mm.
that. You add more nuclear and more capacity for electricity, you can also grow your industrial output. So that's the choice you need to do now. Do you want all your data centers to be in China, in Europe, or in US? That's a choice every country needs to make. Do you want to grow your industrial output, or you want to outsource your industrial output? And what happened with countries that has industrial outputs? They also attract engineering capital and so on. So eventually, companies move to the country where the source is. I mean, if the majority of all the data centers will be in Asia, you will have a majority of the workers and technology in Asia. So that's why energy
Mm.
policy from that perspective is very important, but it's also a geopolitical tool. I mean, look what happened in the war in Ukraine now. A big reason why US really cannot do anything is because the European partners are dependent on Russian oil and gas. Even if they say they are not buying it, it's transited to other countries, the oil is repacked, but it's shipped back to Europe. So they are stuck in a loop. I mean, Europe cannot abandon their people and don't have energy, but they cannot fully support Ukraine either. So,
Mm.
so that's why energy is really, really important. That countries are energy independent.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What do you make of Venezuela and the capture of Maduro and Trump running Venezuela and letting all the American energy companies to extract the oil and sell it? How does that shift the whole energy landscape?
Um, First of all, I think that the Venezuelan oil will take long time to get online because the equipment hasn't been maintained for 20 years. I
Yeah.
mean, there is a misconception. A lot of people think that Venezuela was was crippled because of the sanctions, and that's not true. I mean,
Right.
Venezuela could have sold all that oil to China because China has, I think, like 80% of their energy is imported energy. So they need any energy they can get. What happened was that there is 16 plants in the world that can refine uh, Venezuelan oil. One of them is in China, and 15 is in the US.
Yeah.
So what happened was that when Chavez took over in Venezuela, he kicked out all the American companies. But to operate that special equipment with maintenance, software, personnel, the US just left all the equipment, everything, and went out from Venezuela. And the Venezuelans themselves, the government, they couldn't manage that equipment. So what happened was that it degraded and got destroyed. So the output went down. Today, that oil reserve that Venezuela have is not even maybe, I mean, you say it's the biggest in the world. Yes, it is. But how much of that is economically viable? Maybe only 30% is economically viable because of the prices today. Maybe 10, I don't know, but I know that the majority of the oil reserve is not, you don't make money by pumping it up and refining it. And to get all that online, it's you can get some online quick, you can, but it will take 10, 15 years, I think, to get to full capacity again.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It's
and
super.
in terms of if I think it was good what Trump did and what US did, I think it was very good that they took out Maduro because you had a lot of criminals, terrorist organization, drug lords who were running their operations in Venezuela. Also, the Chinese and the Russians were running their operations in Venezuela. Um, and I mean, if you look anywhere in the world where there's a Venezuelan population, like here in Buenos Aires, in New York, in Miami, also in Venezuela, all of them are out on the street and is very, very happy about this. So the majority of the Venezuelan people, I would say maybe 95%, is very happy that Maduro is gone. This is what they wanted for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean it's super awesome to see because just the way that the country has been managed is totally reduced the standard of living for the ordinary man and and families and households, and the lack of infrastructure maintenance, the ability to work with the international community, the enabling of all the terrorism, the drugs, the cartels, the organizing them to get into America through the borders, causing trouble in there. And it was funny to see that the Chinese delegation was there in the morning to meet with Maduro and shake hands and do all the photos, and at nighttime he's been captured and gone. So I was like, "Whoa, that's Trump's not messing around, is he?"
No, I think the Chinese knew what was going to happen. So I think they were there to get out maybe diplomats or they had another agenda. I don't think they were catched on surprise. Maybe they were
Right.
surprised it happened that day, but the buildup that US did with all the military forces, that's that's not you do what US did with all that military buildup, you cannot back down because then you look weak in the eyes of the enemy. So China knew, and everybody from the military world knew that US will go in, but they didn't know exactly when. But that it was not going to not happen.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how America manages this situation compared to, their failed attempts at getting other countries transformed, like Iraq, Afghanistan. You can go back in history, so it'll be very interesting to see how they do it. And so far, Trump just keeps surprising everybody, and hopefully, this one's a quick turnaround and a proper transition, and Venezuela plays an interesting role in energy and everything else. What are your views on Ukraine, Russia, the peace plan, um, rare earth mineral deal that Trump was doing with Zelensky, Putin? Where do what do you see there happening?
I mean, it's a very complicated situation. This is not something that the Trump administration caused. And what I think there is a misconception out there that say that Russia was threatened by NATO or anything. I would say the opposite, that Russia was actually protected by NATO. Because if you look at the history of Europe, Europe has always been at war. Europe has always tried different countries, Poland, Ukraine, Finland, Sweden, France, Germany has tried to invade Russia. Russia has tried to invade Germany. Germany has tried to invade France and UK and so on. It has been a continent of constant war and invasions all the time. So what NATO did was that it actually protected the European continent from not have any wars at all. So the more countries that joined NATO came up from, and especially in Eastern Europe, is that every country that joined NATO became much, much, much richer and had a protection of not being invaded. But I lived in the region in Ukraine, so I know from the ground and understand the Slavic culture. And I also understand the Russian mindset. And as Russia sees it, is that for them, it's about survival. It has nothing to do that it will be a peace plan or to be or they were threatened by NATO or anything. For them, they have to take Ukraine, they have to take Poland, they have to take the old Soviet Union countries, and that is based on geopolitics. It's not based on that. In their mind, they don't see that they have any other way of surviving, because Russia is a flat land. So it means that they don't have any natural obstacles like a lake or mountain that makes it impossible, that makes it hard to invade it. Those things exist in the other countries around Russia. So that's an old
Yeah.
doctrine that goes back to Catherine the Great from the 1600 century. Um, so to solve this situation is super hard. And from the mindset of the Russians and Putin, I don't think at all that they want to have any kind of peace. That's not how
Yeah.
they operate, and that's not what they want. They want to take everything, or they will stop when they cannot continue anymore.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm kind of seeing the similar, you know, trend that's happening. It's rather bizarre for Ukraine to kind of be in this position because Ukraine has so much history with the Soviet Union, Russia. Putin talked about the history of the relationship on Tucker Carlson's show. This was a long time ago when Tucker was in Russia with Putin, and so I kind of like in a very naive sense have this very bizarre kind of feeling about it. It's like what do you mean you want to be westernized or Western? You are very Russian in many ways. You're like very Soviet in many ways. Again, I have, I don't have much on the ground knowledge or information about the history. I try to learn and read a lot about it. Um, but it does seem that Putin's very much interested in growing the Russian Federation and restoring that Soviet Union. That I think he's very bitter about the fact that it had all fallen apart, and NATO is building its capabilities in the border, and America's intentions for why they are in partnership with Ukraine because they want to get too close to Russia. So it's very complicated, as you said. Will be interesting to see how it plays out. Um, just quickly, what's your take on Trump going for Greenland? I
I
think
mean,
there's a lot of rare earth.
I will go
Sorry, go
back
ahead.
to to Russia again, and I will say something that I think that many people doesn't say, and then we can leave that
Yeah,
topic. But
sure.
you know, Russia is supposed to be the second biggest and most powerful military in the world. I mean, if you after 4 years cannot invade a country like Ukraine, then you're basically worthless. Your military is worthless. You have over 1 million soldiers lost. You cannot
Yeah,
project power. You're kicked out from Venezuela. You're kicked out from Syria. You're kicked out from anywhere in the world. Your
yeah,
military technology they have in Russia is probably from the 50s and 60s. They haven't advanced anything. We don't see
yeah,
any Termata tanks. We don't see any new Su planes. We see like old planes from the 50s and 60s.
yeah,
These trench warfares, it's old Kalashnikovs, and it's like, and Ukraine is not getting the modern weapons. They're getting the weapons from the 70s and the 80s, and they are stopping the Russians on old weapons from the 70s and 80s. Ukrainians are
right.
outnumbered. They are outnumbered in everything, and the Russians they advanced like 1 meter per day or 30 centimeters per day. They spend
Yeah,
200,000 soldiers to take a city like Bakhmut, which was 25,000 people. I was like, it's what are they doing? I mean, I
yeah,
think that Sweden and Finland could alone go in right now and defeat the Russians themselves. I mean, if you can fly into Venezuela, which is full of of air defense, Russian air defense for $6 or $10 billion, not a single American plane was shut down, not a single missile was shut down, not a single helicopter was shut down. If you can just fly straight into a country, imagine what the Nordic countries can do, who is also very advanced, have American weapons, have their own production of weapons, with modern airplanes. Like they have platforms from 2000, 2010, 2025, super advanced manufacturing. They would alone take out the Russian, what do you call it, the paper bear. So
yeah. So
the
why
all
not end the war then? Like why can't Sweden and these guys, or America, or the UK, France, they're very like, passionate about this, and they've been fighting this for a long time. If they know that Russia doesn't have a lot of capability and there is no retaliation from Russia, why don't they just go in and end the war? Why the peace talks? Why peace plans? And what's the
because
thing
because
there?
because Putin has one card that he can play against the West, is that
Which is
all other governments in the democratic countries like we are in the West, is that
uh-huh.
we cannot make our people suffer. Then we lose elections. We cannot keep the
Right.
lights off. We cannot crash the economy. Putin can. He can say, and he probably said it to Trump and to other ones. He probably
Mm-hmm.
said like this: I don't give a fuck about my people. If they suffer, they can suffer for 100 years. I don't care. While as Macron, Trump, or any other politician cannot do that.
Mm.
So, and what is it that Putin has that is important for the world economy to function? That is the oil.
Mm.
So the Russian oil cannot go offline. It will hurt China, it will hurt the US, it will hurt all Europe. It will hurt the whole world ecosystem. So when that can be replaced with something else, or somebody else can replace the Russian output, that's when I think the war will end. Because
Yeah.
Russia could never invade a NATO country. I mean, Sweden and Finland would beat Russia alone.
Yeah. But if Russia's military is that weak, why can't Trump fly in a helicopter and pick up Putin and take him away? Why can't we do that? Does that sound too simple?
Um, how do you know that Putin will not do that, or that Trump will not do that? We don't know. We don't know the
Maybe he's
plan.
yeah. Yeah, that would be fun to watch. It's like, whoop, just pick him up because if it
But
sounds like he's that weak, then
but I can tell you one thing: U.S.
yeah.
we are not living in a multipolarity world. That you can anybody who believes that can forget about that. U.S. is a hegemon. U.S. is 100 years more advanced than any other nation when it comes to military, and nobody can beat U.S. It's impossible. U.S. could alone take on the whole world. So U.S. knows exactly on the millimeter where Putin and Xi or whatever leader you have in the world, they know exactly everything at all times. And they're
Wow.
listening to every call and every email.
Wow. Maybe they're watching this podcast right now. Putin's like, get that guy, get both of them. That's
Nah,
what?
I'm not the only one who is telling this or saying it. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it's not new revelation of information. It's just that it's more newsworthy to show to be afraid of nukes and nuclear war. But I mean, come on, the Russia or China or any country they try to launch a nuclear weapon, US will know that in seconds. And it's not like Russia can launch 500 nukes if they want. It's probably will take them several months to launch nukes. US has, I think, 300 nukes that can be fired within 2 minutes. Russia might have five.
Wow. Wow. 300 nukes in 5 minutes. Boom. And Russia has
Yes,
five. That's
maybe
crazy.
five,
Five.
maybe.
Maybe.
I don't know. I'm
Man.
I'm not an expert on that, but I mean, if you do a fast calculation to maintain the stockpile Russia claimed they have, that would cost $100 billion per year. I don't think that Russia has spent $100 billion per year since 1991 of maintaining their nuclear stockpile. I think they are have that's more than their entire military budget. So maybe they spend a couple of billion to maintain that stockpile, but they don't have the capabilities they claim they have. What this
Yeah.
is simple military tactics. If you are weak, try to appear as strong. If you're strong, try to appear as weak.
Yeah, it's like when you're a monopoly, you need to appear as you're not a monopoly. When you're not a monopoly, you need to appear as a monopoly because you can then say, "Look, we are unique and different," right? So that's a very simple marketing tactics, and you can see when Trump interacts with Putin, and he might have a little bit more respect for Putin for reasons that he explains, and then he talks to Zelensky in a very different way. Like the whole scene we remember in the White House Oval Office, Zelensky coming and JD Vance being there, and they're like attacking him, and so it's very interesting to see those dynamics and how they play out. And Iran is a classic one. Like Trump deals with them very differently. It's like if you want to build nuclear weapons and this and that, we'll just fly and bomb your old facilities and if Trump wanted, they can just take out the Ayatollah Khomeini in 24 hours. So it's very interesting how much power America has and how that's played out in media and all these peace talks and nuclear chats and energy chats, and it's very fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, there is probably 90. Now I'm just guessing, but probably 90% what's happening on the world stage and is probably behind closed doors. We don't know what's going
Mm.
on. We know very, very little because we're not there. I mean, what Trump says to Putin on a public call is one thing, but what he says in private, we don't know. And
Yeah.
America, as power as it is, I mean, it cannot be involved in every conflict. It cannot do everything at the same time. So it's also very, very complex. The whole world. I mean, there is China, there is Europe, there is Africa, there is Australia, New Zealand, it's South America, so and North America. So it's a very complex. And then you have something very interesting which we don't know almost anything about, and that's what's happening in Antarctica. What's going on there?
What is going on over there? What is it that we don't know?
We don't know anything. And there is no
Mm.
country in Antarctica. There is nobody who really owns the land. We know that there is US Marshals are there, but there is no law there. And if you try to go there, I don't think you can just go there.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think you
There are a
can
lot of.
go to some zones, like guided zones, but you cannot go any there. And then there is rumors of military bases there, and like there is something going on there. But I don't
Yeah.
know what it is.
Yeah, it's fascinating. There's always like, like secret space military programs and launches that nobody knows about. SpaceX just did a deal with like US military to do like space programs. Like, what are you guys doing with military in the space? Like, you know, clue us in, give us some information. But yeah, it's, all those things are super, very fascinating to kind of break down and
But
speculate and,
I mean, most things usually have very simple explanations. And it could be as simple as, I mean, you have a new iPhone, new computer, new chip, anything. Where do you go and test all that stuff? Yes, you go to Antarctica because it's very dry, it's very cold, and you test your technology there that is working. So
yeah.
it could be that it's just a very good place where you're testing a lot of technologies, fabrics, materials, and so on,
Yeah.
computer chips. So that's why you want to have access to it.
Yeah.
It could be that simple.
Mm. So going back to Greenland, I think I asked you that question, and we don't want to skip it.
Mm.
What are your thoughts on Trump wanting to annex Greenland from Denmark? And there's lots of talk about. There's a lot of rare earth minerals worth 10,000 years worth of rare earth minerals for all sorts of different things, energy,
But
computer components.
rare earth minerals are not rare. That's a myth. Rare earth
Really?
minerals, yeah, is the extraction that is rare. The capabilities of taking it out and refine it, that's rare.
Mm.
And that's where
Right. I
China
see.
has the advantage because they have built that capacity.
Right.
But US has more than it needs.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
of course
Interesting.
there is different concentrations in different soils that are more concentrated maybe in Greenland. I mean, US is already present with a military base on Greenland, and if land has been sold before, maybe US should make a good deal with Denmark and buy it from Denmark.
Yeah, yeah. That would be interesting.
Yeah,
It's always
but I
fun with
don't.
these things. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't really. I'm not so familiar with the situation why US needs Greenland. Maybe they don't, maybe they do, maybe it's just a PR thing. I have no idea. But let's say that US really, really need Greenland, and it's very important for US survival. Then I think Denmark is in a very good position to make a very good deal.
Yeah, it almost feels like when Trump got into power and when he got into the White House and he got in such spectacular fashion that it almost became a trend for him to like pull out his shopping list and go, "Oh, I want that. Oh, Greenland, that looks nice. I'll take Greenland too." And he'll send his son in a plane and go and do a visit and everyone's like, "Oh my god, Trump." It's almost like he's on some kind of like, TV tour or something, So there is a layer of comedy involved with Trump and the way he says things and trolling everybody and the European Union, for example, the UK. JD Vance was in Europe and he's like, "You guys all suck." And so so who knows what's underneath all of that, and I guess for Trump, if he wants it, he can have it. If you mention like you mentioned, he's got all the military, he knows where everybody is, what the movements are, he's listening to all the calls, he's got all the information, so he can.
I mean, Denmark is an ally to the US. So I mean, I see it as impossible that US would invade Greenland and take it over and annex it. It will be negotiations, um, but I mean, there's many ways a country can cooperate. Maybe Trump just want to set up mining operations there and then extend the military base. U.S. already have a military base there, so maybe this question is not really a question. It's just something for the newspapers to write about.
Yeah, yeah.
So I wouldn't pay so much attention to this Greenland thing because Denmark and US has had very good relationship for 100 years. Um,
Mm.
so
Yeah, it's
I don't see it as really a question.
okay. No, it's very interesting to sort of understand all these things in the context of nuclear energy, world dominance, geopolitics, and what's going on. Moving on, it's the 40th anniversary this year of the events of in Chernobyl. What are your thoughts on that? Lessons learned? Any new perspectives on Chernobyl? How is the world going to see Chernobyl in a different light this year? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it was a mistake to close Chernobyl down. I think they should have continued operating Chernobyl because
Really?
after the accident, yeah, I think Chernobyl was closed 2010.
Hmm.
They operated Chernobyl after the accident. They operated for 10 to 15 years. They operated Chernobyl. So to close it down, I think was a mistake. I think they should have improved the safety, improved the design, and continued the operation. I think that would have benefited Ukraine because I think that to the cost of Chernobyl and all that exclusion zones and the big containment around it, I think that cost like 7% or 5% of the Ukraine state budget. So it would have been much more beneficial to keep it running.
Yeah.
But just in that case, I don't know if it was political or if it was based on engineering and that the plant was too old to operate. That I don't know. But in my opinion, you should have continued running it.
Okay. No, that's a very I think a fresh view that I haven't heard before because everyone's so much caught up in this media of, oh my god, Chernobyl, look what happened and everybody died and nuclear is so bad and look at these dogs, they're turning blue. Did you see this latest story of these dogs turning blue?
Yeah, but I mean, there was not so many people that died from the accident. I think it was the I mean, people were sitting in the building next to it and it happened nothing to them. Uh, I think the people that mostly died was firefighters because they were not informed that it was a nuclear catastrophe. They just thought that it was like They didn't know that the material they were touching um, were graphite that was giving out radiation. So they died because they touched nuclear material. But if they would have known that it was nuclear material, they would have special gloves or special equipment. Other from that, of course, people got affected by it, but not in the way that is portrayed in media, and not in the way that is generally assumption that it was actually not that dangerous. I mean, it dies
Yeah.
more people from bacterias in agriculture than it dies from any sort of nuclear accident. And nuclear accident can actually be contained. So, and
Mm.
there is already, and this you have to, the Chernobyl, that reactor, that was the, how do you say it? It was the construction was not made in a correct way. So everything in that reactor was made by cutting corners, earning some extra money, removing some material. So a reactor today, it can almost not happen. It's so
Yeah.
safe that it's like 99.99% safe.
Yeah, yeah. I think those are some really good lessons learned from Chernobyl, and we can really try and shift the perspective on what actually happened and the misinformation and the media. I mentioned the blue dog thing. Apparently, these blue dogs were not mutated as a result of the radiation in Chernobyl. It was a blue chemical dye likely leaked from a portable toilet nearby that turned these dogs blue.
I didn't know
It's
about that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm just reading about it actually on Google AI, and it's actually nothing to do with the radiation from Chernobyl. It's to do with a blue dye that got leaked in a portable toilet. So it's amazing how much misinformation is leading us. There's so many events happening around the world for nuclear energy this year. um, there is a lot going on, and but it's also fascinating how much they talk about how, oh, Chernobyl was a real event and we should not minimize the event, and it was really dangerous. So many people died because of the nuclear thing, and so we can't go back in there, and we have to be very safe with nuclear, and we need more regulation, and the technology is not good enough. So I feel there's so much noise, and the beauty of this nuclear show we're doing is we're going to really bring the truth to the front in terms of nuclear and the things that's happened, and it's the opportunity we have, the N1 reactor that you're building, which I think is super super exciting. And I want to shift the conversation back to N1 reactor that you're doing. I know you're gearing up for a very big major investment round. Could you talk a little bit about that in terms of your investment round, how it's shaping up, when it's going live, and what are your thoughts on getting that sort of up and running to accelerate your next phase for Nuclearis Energy?
Yeah, so we started. We're right now we're bootstrapping the company because we have another company which is called Nuclearis, which is a company that are producing mechanical parts for several nuclear reactors. So we have already revenues from that. Plus, that we as the founders, we are also bootstrapping the company and investing our own money in the business. But we started a seed round now in November, and we are very soon. I have to be a little bit careful about what I say, but we are opening up maybe for the public markets to participate. in Nuclearis and to be able to be shareholders in Nuclearis. So I would say to people to go to Nuclearis Energy, nuclearisenergy.com, click on the button invest, and there you will find more information about future upcoming events, how to be a shareholder in Nuclearis. I think that to build nuclear in the future, you need to have a community, you need people to be engaged. I don't think that this traditional way of raising money to have only one big VCs is the future. I think that new companies should have a community of people who are interested in the company, who is contributing together with the VCs, of course. But I believe in communities, because in the end, this product is going to be installed in a community. So it's possible that maybe a town will be an owner of an N1, a small town of 50,000 people. They go together, they buy an N1, and it supplies energy to the town for 20 years.
Yeah.
One thing that I wanted to say is that I also think that data centers that nobody wants their data centers to come into their town or city, because what happens
Mm.
when a data center comes into the city is that it will consume a lot of energy, and what happens then? Energy prices goes up. Another thing is
Yeah.
that the data center will take the water resources of that town as well, because they need nuclear,
Yeah.
or they need a gas plant, or coal plant. Coal plant and gas plants also needs a lot of water sources. So what's good with the N1 is that the N1, it what's good is that the data centers, what they need when they are moving now to a town, is that they need to bring their own water source and their own energy source.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the towns will say no. And that's what's perfect with the N1, because you don't need any external water source because it's air cooled, and you're moving your reactor with to the town. So a data center can move into any town and says the only thing we are bringing our own resources, our own energy resources, and what comes extra from that energy sources we can actually sell back to the grid, lowering the prices of energy in the town. Because
Yeah.
what you know that those big data centers, what do they produce? They need energy, of course, electricity, but what do they do with that electricity? They're creating a lot of heat, and that heat can be sold back very cheap to the city as district heating, to warm showers, and also be used in the winter for heating. So,
Yeah.
together with the N1, it can be really good for a city and for the data centers.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Talking about data centers and artificial intelligence, I think one of the first conversations you and I had a few months ago, you told me that in 3 years' time, the world will require 3 times the amount of energy it consumes today, and a lot of it is sort of like, you're looking at these artificial intelligence, and no, people are reluctant to have data centers. You have these, and to counter those things, like, no, actually you can have it, you just need an N1, a micro reactor, and it doesn't really consume all of your other resources, and you can still advance forward. What are your thoughts on artificial intelligence, where it's headed, where it's at now, where it's growing? What do you make of artificial intelligence?
Uh, yeah, I had a startup in artificial intelligence in Ukraine, so I was actually working with that already. In, I think we started 2017 or 2016, or
Yeah.
2018, 2017, 2018. We started with artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
It was not as advanced that it is today. We were working with image vision, but it required a lot of energy. That I remember, a lot of energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Today, the models are so much stronger and bigger, so they require extremely more energy. And what's coming online is that I mean, when I was in artificial intelligence in AI, it was a niche market, niche product, and very few users. Today, I think that everybody with a mobile phone and a computer is using AI in their daily life. It integrated into our lives. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I had an argument today with the AI. I was actually having an argument.
Yeah, yeah. I have them every day myself.
Yeah, and you know that people goes to AA meetings for anonymous alcoholic, and I just heard a
Yeah.
couple of weeks ago that now it's a somebody goes to AA, and I was like, okay, so you're an alcoholic? He's no, it's anonymous AI. So so people are addicted to AI and
Mm,
interacting so much with AI that they
yeah.
need to go, they need professional help for that.
Yes.
So so AI is here to stay, and it will get much more advanced, much better.
Yeah.
I think the first thing we will see advancement in AI is because the models today, I think they are not accurate. They like 70% of the information is correct, but 30% is wrong. So you ask, for an example, what is one plus one? And 70% of the times it answers two, but 30% of the times it can answers like three or four or 10 or something else. Um,
Yeah.
so I think the main thing that what will come out, the first major developments we will see is image processing, that we will have like more and more realistic images that will be more accurate, and videos that will be more accurate.
Yeah.
So for that industry, when it comes to making content for video content and image content, I mean, I was, you know, I have a daughter that is 4 years old. We went yesterday. We went down in the subway and traveled just one station, and then we said like, now we're in Paris just for fun, playing around. Then when
Yeah.
we came home, we were going to show Mama that we have been in Paris. So what did we do? We took a selfie. We asked the AI, "Can you make a background so we are in Paris?" And we used
Yeah.
Google AI Studio for that. And it's just like in a matter of 10 seconds, we were in Paris, and we could show Mama that we have been in Paris. And it was like,
Yeah.
it was very good done. But you see, you know, on the faces, it changes a little bit. It's not
Yeah.
really that accurate. It's still good, but it's not there. So I think the
Yeah.
advancement will first come in video creation and in image creation.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, that's definitely going to change a lot of things. I mean, I have an artificial intelligence startup. It's called Funny Machines. We're trying to come up with research small language models for comedic intelligence, which can be used for inserting humor based emotional intelligence and humanoids and artificial intelligence that can use that intelligence to learn in physical environments. You have a future with AI that can be generalized. There is one God that sits in one of the pockets of these billionaires. It could be Elon Musk, it could be Sam Altman, and then everything is generalized to that sort of one God. Or it could be AI can be generalized based on how humans are generalized on land. Japanese people are different to Swedish people and American people and French and New Zealand and Australia. So if you use comedic intelligence, you can have AI that's learning from the local humor, local nuance, local culture, local knowledge. It's safeguarding knowledge and information, and that it's so fascinating, and it's so impossible to solve because you're trying to create a human-like shift in AI. And but you're right, we're soon going to see video, photos become almost perfect. They become more human-like. They understand our emotion. They understand humor. They understand nuance. They understand culture. And I'm writing a TV show, a cartoon show. We're thinking about how to use AI with funny machines and the apps and the tools that we're looking to create to help us with writing, script writing, and then create video, create YouTube 1 minute sketches, full season episodes. So there's so many AI film studios that are being built now. There are $800 million studios for creating film TV are being scrapped, replaced with $50 million AI studios. So yeah, it's definitely going to change, and all of that needs energy. It's like
Yeah.
when you think about AI is like you can break down AI into talent, people, the engineers. You can break it down into hardware, data centers and chips and NVIDIA chips, and the third one's energy, right? And the grid can't sustain it. Renewable sources can't sustain it. And everyone's now looking at nuclear, going, we need to use whatever plants we have. Can we bring them back? Can we use micro reactors like N1, which I feel like N1's probably the best solution for data centers. Are you getting that feeling in the market?
Yeah, absolutely. We have good responses from data centers, and we are in talks with several data centers, and we will probably
Yeah.
have some news in January, February, maybe later. But
Wow.
we see that the demand is there. And what's unique with us is that we can supply it fast, and we can supply
Yeah.
it at more economically. Now I know that the data centers are really not looking at the cost at the moment, because they just need the power source. But
Yeah.
that will eventually also be important because you want to have as cheap energy as possible.
Yeah. Absolutely. Did you have a presentation to do, Jonas? Do you want to take us through some of the slides?
You mean from Nuclearis?
Yeah, yeah. Did you want to share anything? Anything? I think we were talking about
Yes.
it offline before we started recording. That you had you may have some slides that you wanted to share with us.
Yeah, I wanted to share our reactor to show how it looks like. Give me a
Yeah,
second here.
please,
We'll
because
just,
it is very gorgeous. It's beautiful. I want to have it framed in my
yes,
studio. Actually, it is beautiful.
you should.
And
We're going, we're actually,
your gigafactory looks amazing as well. The renderings of your gigafactory looks amazing. That is the future.
yes, it is. It is. I can show our current factory today also. You see the screen now?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, great. So this is our current manufacturing facility today. Now it's a little bit bigger, I think, than in this picture, but here we are producing cobalt, we're producing steel rings, but this is very technical and specific terms for nuclear. But we're manufacturing around 7 nuclear components here for 3 nuclear reactors. Um, so we have a picture of how the N1 looks like. So the N1, it's um, it's a 24-meter long and 4.5-meter in diameter long capsule that you have underground, and it's transportable on a flatbed.
Okay.
And here it's how it would look for a data center, for an example. You would put it underground.
Yeah.
Here you have the air cooling unit. Here you have a service tunnel, and here you have the turbine. That is the turbine and the generator that makes the electricity.
Yeah.
Inside the reactor, we will not show today. I don't think that's very interesting to see, or maybe it is. And then we
Yeah.
have this is how we are planning to produce the N1s in the factory.
Wow.
One thing that we didn't speak about is that the N1 is also suitable for military use. So we have
Wow.
also applied to several several programs in the DoD as well.
Okay.
So this is, for an example, how it could be transported in.
That looks beautiful, man. That looks beautiful.
Yes.
That is just like perfect in terms of like it being a nuclear reactor. It is beautiful.
And this is how it would look above from the ground.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
here would be the cooling unit. The reactor itself would be here, and there we
Yeah.
see a person, so you can see the size, how big
Yes.
it would
Yeah.
be. And here would be the service tunnel that you go down into,
Yeah.
and it would be this.
What's your maximum capacity for installing N1s in one location? Because in that image I saw 3 of them next to each other.
Yeah, I mean you can. It's a modular build, so you could put
You
60
can just
if you
add
want.
how many modules you want.
Yes.
Wow. And what is the cost for one module, one N1 battery? What is the cost for that?
It depends on the current fuel price, but we are calculating around 100 to, depending on what the fuel will be, 100 to 130 million dollars for the fuel for the reactor, and then you have 17 megawatt, 99% capacity factor for 20 years without refueling.
100 million for one N1. So if you want to add one more, it's another 100 million.
Yes.
And those numbers add. Sorry, go ahead.
The more you add, the cheaper the maintaining the cost of operating and maintaining the reactors will be. The maintenance cost will, because you're linking them together, so you would have less maintenance and less personnel because one person can operate several.
Yeah. So if a data center or anyone else did not go for the 100 million N1 reactor and use energy from the grid for 20 years, they would be spending more than 100 million on energy?
No, I mean, if they would buy one, I mean, basically a data center would not buy the N1 per se. They would buy a contract with an operator, and the operator will sell the electricity, will commit a PPA contract or something similar with the where the data center will commit to buy the electricity for 20 years. But they will not operate it themselves. But for simplify the discussion, if they buy one N1, they pay the fuel for today. So it means that this is the price today for the fuel, but in 15 years, the price of fuel will be here, but the data center will have the price of what it is from the first day they bought it for 20 years.
Yeah, I guess that's the most attracting factor in all of this, right? You're locking your prices in now.
Yes, that's one of the factors. Plus, it's low maintenance. You don't have the refueling, so you have a very low maintenance. It's only 3.5 days maintenance per year.
3.5 days of maintenance per year?
Yes.
Wow. That is too good to be true, Jonas.
Yes, I mean, then you have some maintenance in the turbine, but what's good with the PWR is that you can do maintenance during operation.
Yeah.
And a lot of things that you can do in the N1 because it's smaller is that you can do a lot of robotic inspections. So you don't need to shut down the reactor and have a person go inside. You could do a lot of those inspections with a robot. Now the
Mm.
robot cannot be there all the time because robots also cannot sustain too much radiation, but you could do several operations with a robot. We are actually thinking to use the Tesla Optimus bot
Yeah.
to do maintenance, but we will see with that. We have to,
Yeah.
if Elon sees this, he can send us to us one so we can experiment on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, yeah. Elon, if you're watching Nuclearis, send us some Optimus robots to do nuclear maintenance and manufacturing. I think the cool thing about Optimus robots, is really bringing down that cost and really solving issues to do with talent and the high skills you need in manufacturing factories to assemble these things. Elon, when he was building Starship, which is his biggest rocket, fully reusable rocket, not there yet, but almost there, he went away from carbon fiber to steel. And one of the reasons for that is not just steel gets much more tougher in when it's very cooled or when it's very hot. It's also that he can just build them with a tent in the middle of the desert, and he can just hire people who can weld steel together. So he really solved a lot of issues around accessibility of resources and talent and people who can put together these things very quickly. He's building the Raptor engines for Starship rocket one a day. That's how much
Mm.
he's manufacturing in terms of those things. So with Optimus robots and using artificial intelligence to work at the N1 factory and maintenance and all these sites, I think that's the holy grail. That can just really get things moving very, very fast. Can accelerate the assembly of these things from 11 months to maybe like 3 months.
Yeah, no, that
No, too much, too much. Slow down. Don't get too
no, it's
excited.
3 weeks. No,
Oh,
no,
really?
I mean, no, because there is a lot of inspections that is involved in the manufacturing process and the externals inspections, approvals, and so on.
Yeah,
Um, but there is certainly room for improvement, of course. Um,
sure.
there is. Maybe you can get it down to 7 months. But what is the most I think would be because what you don't want to do in nuclear is that you don't want to do something that is too new, because if it's too new, the regulator don't understand it, and they need to understand it. Then they need to study it, they need to test it. So you want to do as much standard things as possible, because you don't want to be 10 years or 15 years in just getting your design approved. You want to have your design approved in 18 to 24 months. And that's what we can do. We can get our
Yeah,
design certificate in 18 to 24 months. Then we can start building the factory. So in 3 years, very optimistic 3 years, we can start manufacturing. In 4 years, for sure, we can start manufacturing.
yeah,
And
yeah.
even if you
Yeah,
start
yeah,
today and build an SMR, it will still take, if you say you have an approved ready design today of an SMR, it will still take longer time than for us
yeah.
if we would start just from today, it would be faster to build an N1.
Yeah. The N1, how fast you build N1 when you compare to all the nuclear projects that are currently going and everything that has been built before, it's still very impressive. I mean, think about it. There's 440 nuclear reactors that exist today, around 31 countries, and there's only 70 nuclear power reactors being constructed in 15 countries. I mean, when you
Mm.
think about how big the world is, that's a very, like, those numbers are very low numbers. And when you bring in N1 reactor in the mix, and you're producing so many in the period that you mentioned, that is still really amazing, and it's probably the most attractive feature of N1 micro reactor.
I mean, you have what many people don't think about is that nuclear energy doesn't exist in every country because you cannot build nuclear energy in any country. And that is constrained by the countries. One, you have to have the regulation, but regulation you can outsource. For an example,
Yeah.
I think that the US framework should be outsourced and standardized in all the world. So if there is, for an
Right.
example, El Salvador who wants to have nuclear, then they should cooperate and outsource that regulation to the NRC in the US, and have the US framework in El Salvador or in Africa. Um,
Right.
but one of the main issues is that it doesn't matter if you build in Africa or in Colombia, you build a nuclear power plant, it cannot be used because they don't have
Mm.
the infrastructure. The grid doesn't exist for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it means that to build that kind of grid and do that upgrades will take 10, 15, 20 years. So those
Mm.
countries will never be able to grow out of poverty because they cannot add that capacity.
Yeah.
Whereas if you go with a microreactor, the current grids is enough. You can supply a
Mm.
town of 50,000 people with electricity. Imagine in Africa, you can start having AC, you can start having stable, cheap power for your gold mines or to do clean water, sewer treatment, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
And also, what nuclear brings to a society is that it also brings science. You have scientists, universities, studies. So it brings
Yeah.
not only electricity, it brings so much more. And I
Mm.
mean, from 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 nuclear power generation, you're also creating isotopes. For an example, cobalt 59, which is not radioactive, when it's in a reactor for 1 year, because it's usually in Kanda reactors, you put cobalt 59. After 1 year, it turns to cobalt 60, and then you remove that cobalt 60, which radiate has a lot of radiation, but that radiation is what is used in the cancer treatment. So
Yeah.
isotopes from the nuclear industry is used in a lot of medical equipment. It's also used to radiate food.
Wow.
A lot of food we're eating today is radiated from gamma rays that comes from a nuclear reactor. And that makes the
Mm.
food last much longer. So a steak that lasts maybe 15 days would now last 60 days because it's irradiated food. And as many think, is not dangerous because it's just radiation. And you have like gamma radiation, beta radiation, alpha radiation. That doesn't turn something radioactive. It's just radiation that pass through a material, and then you kill bacteria and viruses. So in fish
Mm.
industry, in meat industry, and in some food products that get radiated, you have a much longer shelf lifetime.
Wow. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. It's not just about energy. It's not about the assembly of these things. It's about how nuclear changes everyday life. Not just about reducing the prices, but accelerating technology, artificial intelligence, data centers, food, research, scientists, schools. I think this is a good place to end it. Um,
Yes.
Jonas, can you tell us where people can find you, your Twitter handle? Tell us again, Nuclearis Energy website, any information about where people might be able to access your latest news and investment opportunities. Give us all the critical info.
Yeah, so you can find Nuclearis at nuclearisenergy.com. Just press the button invest if you're interested in investing, or if not, click around, subscribe to the newsletter. If you want to check us out on X, it's Nuclearis Energy. Nuclearis Energy is the Twitter handle or X handle, and the same for Instagram and for LinkedIn. We post sometimes on our social medias, and there comes all the news about Nuclearis. For me, it's Jonas Helwig, JonasHelwig, and just type that in X or in LinkedIn, and you will find me. I also have my website, jonashelwig.com. There you can find all my links as well.
Awesome, amazing. Well, thanks a lot for getting the nuclear show off the ground. Thanks to Nuclearis Energy for being a main sponsor, and there's more episodes to come. And I'm sure I'll have you back again when you have some more exciting stuff happening, news, investment rounds, partnerships with data center. I'm sure we'll come back. But this has been a fascinating episode. So thank you so much, Jonas.
Thank you, Adnan. It was great to be on your podcast today, and also your other podcast is really good. I would recommend everybody to subscribe to your other channels as well. And we're looking forward to bring on other companies and also other experts in this field. And we're looking for a great 2026.
Absolutely. Well, it's been awesome, and I can't wait. Bye, everybody.